could hear the cameras ticking. I could smell the scars in fire.
There is a practice that I find, a commercial here. I always forget to say this, Susan, and I'm admonished by our judge advocate to say this. The views expressed tonight, public service announcement. The views expressed tonight are the speakers alone, as if there's any doubt about that, and do not represent official policy. Something I find particularly odious is something called signature strikes. Does anyone know what a signature strike is? Ever hear this phrase? Yeah?
I have no idea what it is.
Yeah. It's the coolest new thing. You know what Terror Tuesdays are, right? Anybody? No. Okay. Barack Obama is our commander-in-chief. Right? And on Tuesdays, he gets together with, well, Mr. Brennan, who is now going to be head of the CIA, and got a lot of support in the Senate to become the author of this, as well as so-called enhanced interrogation techniques. Terror Tuesday is when the president gets together with senior advisors and decides who's going to get it with a drone. And he makes the decision. This is like Lyndon Johnson, for those who remember Vietnam, bent over the map table deciding which bridge, which village is going to get bombed during the Vietnam War. Terror Tuesdays. Now, one of the big data calls for Terror Tuesday is show me the areas that look like trouble spots. And so they get these reams and reams of data, right? And a lot of this data is gathered, some of it's gathered by drones that look over these places for weeks at a time, who's coming, who's going, who's doing what. And when a pattern of behavior suggests, a big group of young men on motorcycles comes in at 2 in the morning, that's a sort of typical, that's a little Taliban fighting unit getting back from somewhere or other. Whenever the behavior patterns seem to fit with what looks like terrorist activity, it has the, quote, signature, the MO, the modus operandi of a terrorist cell. The decision is often made on Terror Tuesday to attack that village because it fits the signature, hence the term signature strikes. And those are all counted as killing bad guys. Okay, so that's where, you know, there's some views of the statistics say that those are not particularly good, and maybe a lot of innocent people are being killed. So it's a mixed bag. There is some military utility. It's why we do this. But I always like to remember something General Robert E. Lee said, looking at one of the bloodier battlefields of the Civil War and speaking to his great colleague, General Longstreet. And he says to him, look, surveying this terrible carnage, "It is good that war is so terrible. Otherwise, we should grow too fond of it." The problem is this new technology makes war seem not so terrible. And we are growing too fond of it. We are, in effect, creating an era of perpetual warfare, of violation of other countries' sovereignty, of the killing of innocents and guilty alike. But an age of warfare, without declarations of war. When was the last time we declared war on anybody? Does anybody know?
World War I. Two.
You're still on fire.
Yeah.
About 70 years ago, one of the strap-hanging allies of the Nazis, I think we declared war on Romania last. 70 years. Gone to war a lot. This is the world I live in. Grenada, Operation Desert Storm, Kosovo, Iraq the second time. Now this business all over the world. Perpetual warfare, no one ever votes for it. For a long time they were hiding the amount spent on these wars outside the official defense budget. For a while they even hid some of the drone budget, but now the business is just too damn big and everybody knows it, so it's coming under closer scrutiny. But I'm trying to be balanced here. There is a reason of military utility, why there are 8,000 of these, and there will be more. The good they do is they allow us to operate in what are called otherwise denied areas. We can put some real harm on our opponents with them, but it comes at the cost of losing a bit of ourselves. Are we really a nation that goes to war without declaring, continues to wage wars, to violate other sovereignty, to create euphemisms for the killing of innocents, when in fact we go to war to say, we say we do this to stop the killing of innocents. And yet we end up doing this. So, I know we have a legal perspective here. Let me just suggest, as someone who lives in the belly of the defense beast, I sit before you a very divided man. I understand the utility of this. I am very, very troubled by the uses, the attractions of this technology. And at the end of the day, I think there is also a practical reason to be cautious. Not just an ethical reason, but a practical reason to be cautious about the drone. The focus of Terror Tuesdays is to try to identify where the leaders are and to kill the leaders. What is the problem? The problem is we live in an age of terror networks. Does anyone know how many times we have killed Al-Qaeda's number 3?
Many times.
By our own admission, 20 times. What's the problem? In a network, a flat organization, everybody's number 3. Right? We killed number 1, that didn't stop anything. In fact, we are out of Iraq. Al-Qaeda is back in. Al-Qaeda is sending people from Iraq to Syria. Al-Qaeda is on the march in Saharan Africa, in Somalia, in Yemen, and in other places that I'm not allowed to mention, lest you be detained. Obviously, a few hundred drone strikes over a decade plus aren't going to solve our problem. Something that requires diplomacy, a different kind of military force aimed at what? Illuminating more of these networks. Right? If we're going to eliminate them, we have to know where they are. There's a fundamental hider-finder dynamic that eludes us. And the practical problem with the drone is that every time it actually takes out somebody who was a bad guy, now we don't know who he was connected to. So the more we take out, the less we may know. The more the problem metastasizes. Okay? We live in a network age. We all understand the power of social networks when we look at something like the Arab Spring. Right? Well, there's a similar dynamic in the uncivil society of terrorists and insurgents. And they are fed just as much by this network dynamic as the social movements trying to overthrow authoritarian governments. So, yes, I'm a divided person, but if you saw me lean, I'd be leaning sort of in this direction away from the notion of a broader use of drones. I think there are legal, ethical, and serious practical problems with them. For those, to anticipate a question that might come along, have I voiced this view within the Pentagon? Yes, repeatedly, and I write a regular column in Foreign Policy magazine, a weekly column called Rational Security, in which I've also said some bad things about drones. I think Linda said it best. We are in the grip of drone fever. Let us hope the fever breaks.